Okay, so it's not even 1 year since the Gemma models made their debut. In fact, that was February 21st in 2024. And not long after that, we also got Gemma 2. If you remember, that was like the end of June in 2024. And after that, we basically had a 2B model and a Japanese fine tune of that model. But after that, things have been pretty quiet up until today. So today is the release of the Gemma 3 family of models. And I will say a family of models. Not only do we have two models like we got with the Gemma 2, we've actually got four models this time. We've got a 1B model, a 4B model, a 12B model, and the big 27B model as well. Not only that, Google is also releasing both the base models and the instruction fine-tune models. So one of the things that's been really disappointing, you probably heard me talk about with some of the Phi models recently, is that they stopped releasing the base models. So if you wanted to do your own fine-tune and stuff like that, you were always stuck. The great thing here is that we don't have that problem with Gemma 3. We've got access to be able to do our own fine-tunes, our own research, test out different ideas for doing things like RL and reasoning fine-tunes with the small models. And then if we wanted to scale that up, we can even do it with the 27B model that's in here. So let's have a look at exactly what they've released, and I'll talk a little bit about the models. All right, so jumping into the models, the first thing that we notice about these is that Gemma 3 has gone multimodal. So for the 4B, 12B, and 27B, not only can they handle text, they can also handle vision understanding. So you basically put images into them. So unfortunately, the 1B doesn't have that, but the three other models have this multimodal understanding in there. And that's actually done with a modified SIGLIP encoder. So a little bit similar to what we've seen for things like Pali Gemma and stuff like that. But now you can use these models for visual question answering for a whole bunch of different tasks that we'll look at in there. All right, next up, these have actually been trained to have a much longer context than Gemma 2. So the 1 billion model has a context of 32,000 tokens, but all the other models actually have a context of 128,000 tokens by default. So this is a huge improvement over what we saw with the previous Gemma models in the past and with a lot of the open weights models that are out there. Many of them actually start with a much smaller context window and have to be trained with rope, etc., by the community. In this case, Google's done all of this for us. And what they've done is that they've initially done training with 32K sequences and scaled that up to 128K with rope. So all four of the models have a massive improvement for multilingual data in here compared to something like Gemma 2. And actually the amount of multilingual data that they used is about double what was used for the Gemma 2 models. So I think that combined with still using the 256K tokenizer that Gemma 2 had, which was very good for a variety of different languages, these models really open up the ability for people to use them for multilingual tasks, but also to be able to take them and fine-tune them for a very specific language, etc. So I would not be surprised if that we see Gemma 3 being used a lot for language-specific versions, whether that's Korean, whether that's European languages, etc. Okay, so if we look at some of the details about the pre-training for this model, each of the models has been trained for a different number of tokens. So for the 27 billion model, it's been trained for 14 trillion tokens. For the 12 billion model, it's been trained for 12 trillion, 4 trillion for the 4B, but 2 trillion for the 1B. So you got to think in many ways that 12 billion parameter model that's being trained for 12 trillion tasks is really going to get a lot of bang for the buck. Now, obviously the 27 will be the big one that gets the best scores, etc. But I think for a lot of people, serving a 12 billion one, perhaps like as a quantized version of that model, should be a pretty rock solid model for doing a variety of different tasks. And they also mention in here that each of the models is an improvement over what they had before with better math and reasoning, etc. But supposedly the 4 billion model is competitive with what the 27 billion model was getting for Gemma 2. And the Gemma 3 27B model is comparable to the Gemini 1.5 Pro model from last year. That's a huge increase there. And I think it's kind of interesting to look at. They've done quite a number of changes in how they actually set the model up. So they've changed the attention layer architectures in here. They've optimized that a lot over the Gemma 2 models. On top of the actual number of tokens that these have been trained for, all of the models have also been trained with knowledge distillation. And they talk about that they've enhanced a lot of the data filtering techniques to try and improve the data that's actually going into the model here. The models themselves have been trained on both TPU v4s and v5s, which is kind of interesting. So they're not trained on the latest TPUs. You could imagine that perhaps those TPUs are being used for the next round of Gemini models as we speak. Now, while they don't talk about how many post-training examples have been done for each of the models, etc., they do talk about that this extended post-training approach does use knowledge distillation, also is using a number of different types of reinforcement learning to both give it alignment, but also to help it with mathematics and reasoning, etc. Right, so I think the best thing is let's jump in and have a play with the models, see how they go, and see what we can actually get out of them. Okay, so let's jump in and look at the demo in here. So the first one, I just want to show you, we can basically take in an image and obviously process this like most of the other ones. But because we've got a reasonably strong multilingual model, we can even get it to do things like translate the outputs and stuff like that it sees. Okay, so you can see we've got the sign there. We're asking it what it says and then translate it to English and French. So it's going to break down, okay, what's actually in the image. And so it's giving us what it actually is in the original language. And then it's basically translating to English and then translating to French. So you can see that because it's got a strong multilingual element to the model, we're able to basically make use of the vision model, but also use the multilingual things at the same time. The other thing that this model is pretty strong at is being able to deal with multiple images at the same time, or even be able to recognize multiple images in something. So you can see here that we've got these two images. I guess one is daytime, one is nighttime. And you can see that it can analyze these and basically give us back, okay, what's the difference in here? And we can see that, okay, sure enough, it's picked up the difference being the time of day, shadows, sky, a whole bunch of things like that. This whole idea of multiple images is also really nice for things like this, where you can just upload a bunch of images and ask it to actually create a story based on these images. You can see it's basically generated a story of the croissant conspiracy. It comes up with a name for the dog. We've got some gold. We've got a girl in there. And you can see that it's sure enough, it's basically using these. I'm looking out, we've got the girl with the frogs on her hat, etc. And I think pretty much most of these images have been used in addressing a story. So this is kind of cute for lots of different ideas that you could sort of play around with. But you could also use this for things like zero-shot classification, where you pass in an image of a positive example of something, and then a second image that is a negative example, and then pass in other images and ask it to basically classify on those. So again, this sort of shows off the strength of easily being able to handle multiple images in here. All right, if we start looking at how it can deal with text, remember, this is not a dedicated OCR model. I do think that what we're going to see, though, is that we're going to see these models get fine-tuned for OCR tasks, especially now that, one, we've got a very strong vision language model here, but also, two, that we've got things like the Ulm OCR has released all their sort of training scripts, their data for actually training up these kind of things. That said, you'll see that this does a pretty nice job at being able to OCR the text that's in here and get out most of that text. I think it's almost all correct in there. And this can do similar kinds of things with handwriting here. So I don't think it's necessarily as accurate. It will depend a lot on the handwriting. But again, you've got something that's able to get this out. Because it's prompt-based, we can ask for it to be in Markdown. We can ask for it to capture the various elements in sections, etc. And then we can even do things like follow up, obviously, with other prompts. And here I'm asking it to basically take the math equations and put them into LaTeX. And you can see that, okay, sure enough, it's generating latex for some of this, although it looks like it's been confused a little bit by some of the formatting. But we're seeing that the model definitely understands the concept of latex and stuff like that in here. So remember that the model that I'm playing with here is the 12B model. So this is in the middle of the models. And that the 4B model is supposed to be on par with the old 27B model. And the 27B model is supposed to be on par with roughly where Gemini 1.5 Pro was. So this is a serious set of models. And you got to commend Google for releasing what was almost equivalent to their previous proprietary models in their open weights format in here. Of course, we can come in here and do things like visual question answering, where we can basically pass in something and then actually just ask a question about it. And of course, we can just use the model as a normal text model in here. So we don't need to use the image capabilities of it all the time at all. We can set the standard things like we would with any of the Transformers models. We can set a system prompt. We can pass in the temperature, all those sorts of things. And see, sure enough, this is basically giving us good standard non-reasoning model levels of text, but for something that's 12B, and remember that the quantized version of this, you'll be able to run pretty easily on most computers. This is a pretty strong model. My guess is that this is going to be supported by Ollama, by LM Studio, etc. So if you are looking for a good medium-sized model that can support images, etc. as well, you've got to start thinking about either using the Gemma 3B or the 12B. And that allows you to do a whole bunch of different tasks locally that in the past you would have had to basically send it out to the cloud for a proprietary model to do this. So you can see here, if I ask it for just a caption, it will give me a nice simple caption, but it's able to then do these detailed captions as well. And the good thing is that unlike things like Florence and stuff like that, where it's been trained for specific things, here it's all up to your prompt. So if your prompt is looking for something specific in the actual image, you can basically put that in your prompt as well. But sure enough, asking for a very detailed caption, it's given us exactly what we asked for in here. All right, let's jump in and have a quick look at how you could set this up in the Transformers library and use it via code. Okay, so to run this in code, you will need a new version of the Transformers library. So I'm actually trying this before the release. So there are a few things that are a little bit different in the code, but they will have either, I think it's a 4.49 or 4.50 version of Transformers out at the time of the release. And then you've got a couple of options in here. You can basically use it from, the simplest way is just to use the pipeline. And they've got a new pipeline here where you've got image text to text, right? So that you can basically just load up the model, set it up, and then to actually use it. So here you can see I'm just loading up the B image, etc. Then to actually use it, you just basically pass that in, that image URL in, and it can do it like that. If you want to run it without the pipeline, they've got a new class of Gemma 3 for conditional generation. You can set that up. And then with this, you can also use the chat templates and stuff like that. So that's how you would use this here. Now, I expect by the time this video is out or a little bit after that, you will also see a version in Ollama. You should be able to use that. And hopefully that will be fully compatible with their VLM SDK so that you can use images and stuff like that, just like you would normally in there. And it should be also up on Kaggle and on Google Cloud Platform's Vertex Model Garden for you to use as well. So DeepMind is clearly getting behind the release and they're trying to get it to all the platforms. The 27B model may also be up on AI Studio for you to try. I'll do some more videos with the new Gemma 3 over the next couple of weeks. We'll look at what you can do with it when you're using it locally, at some of the tricks if you want to use the cloud version, etc. And even how you can use this in some of the agent frameworks going forward. Overall, the Gemma 3 release and the family of models, and I haven't even covered things like there's a new Shield Gemma model coming out as well. Overall, they're very impressive. Definitely worth checking out if you're into using local models or on-prem models, etc. If you're doing any sort of research with models, the 1B and the 4B allow you to try out a lot of different ideas with these small models that still are very strong for their size, etc. All right, as always, if you've got questions, etc., put them in the comments below. If you found the video useful, please click like and subscribe, and I will talk to you in the next video. Bye for now.